a violent nature is a horror movie amalgamation.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
Picture a character that is like Michael Myers and Jason combined, mixed with a little bit of Victor Crowley, but then when you really think about it, you can put any mindless killer who walks really slow in this position and then mix that with a little bit of an Evil Dead Texas Chainsaw Massacre type atmosphere, and also sprinkle a little bit of Tucker and Dale versus Evil in there for good measure. There are so many horror movie tropes and cliches scattered throughout this film. But yet I believe that the filmmakers knew what they were doing. They know what this is. They do play up on all the silly aspects of the horror genre. Like, for instance, when people run away from this slow ass moving killer, but yet somehow they trip and fall or get caught on something before they get killed. And I find it interesting that we don't witness a lot of these tropes from the viewpoint of the victims. We get a lot of the perspective from the killer, so I do believe that it does make these silly tropes a bit more interesting. They're adding a bit more spice to this familiar dish. If I dare say, I feel like the filmmakers are doing something here that kind of steers this genre in a new direction. They take these things that are familiar in horror movies and they utilize them in a pretty clever way. When I think about it, it's kind of like peering behind the curtain, if you will. Think of watching John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween from the perspective of Michael Myers the entire time. You would have witnessed the sequence of Michael Myers capturing and killing and eating a dog. Maybe I don't want to see that.
Buckle up.
I find it interesting that this film tells the story from the perspective of the killer, but unlike Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon, this film takes itself much more seriously.
Oh shit. Oh fuck. Oh stop.
Some people may think that this movie is boring, and I wouldn't disagree with them on that because from the very beginning, this film is super slow. We're following this killer walking around aimlessly for hours on end, but yet at the same time there are important pieces of information that need to be digested. I feel like it's one of those blink and you'll miss it kind of films, even though you feel like you're not missing anything at all by looking at some trees for what feels like a century. I think you might become so bored that you get distracted. Now you're not paying attention to the film, and when your mind finally re-enters this fictionalized world that the filmmaker set up for you, you're lost because you weren't paying attention to what was happening on the screen. The film takes its time with the pace of the story. While we are following the killer walking around, there are numerous moments where there is information being given to us about the killer, whether it be through dialogue or a visual medium. And I think that all this film's nuance could be lost in the background if you're not paying attention. I think the people sitting down to watch this film should take this into account. What you are witnessing in the beginning may seem insignificant at that specific moment in time, but everything comes full circle later on down the line. A lot of things come full circle in this film. You just have to be patient and let it soak in, because like I said, imagine if we were watching a Halloween film from the perspective of Michael Myers the entire time. That would probably be boring, but if they were building something like this film does, with the main killer, with the background characters, with the tropes and the cliches, we would have a movie that rewards its audience for bearing the burden of being patient and waiting for something to happen, only to kind of be disappointed in the beginning, but then realizing once the shit goes down, it's an infliction of pain that might stick with you for a very long time. That's in a violent nature. That's all I have to say.
That's the most revolting thing I've ever seen.
Awesome.